Hi, how's it going? This is Greg with howtobuildgames.com. Today we're going to pick up where we left off. This is going to be part 4 in our Unity 2D game series. First, let me say thanks for all the support so far. I really appreciate it. I've had tons of encouraging comments and some suggestions and stuff like that. That's great. Please keep that stuff coming. If you go to our website at howtobuildgames.com, there's not a lot to see there yet. You got our main logo. You've got brief description in the email sign up. This is how you get the source code and the art assets and everything that we're using. So make sure that you go over here and sign up. If you haven't watched these videos before, you should go back and start with the first one over here. Part 1 is always the good place to start. The last video was part 3 over here. This is going to be part 4. We're going to have 1 or 2 parts left after this, but we're starting to wind it down. Most of the gameplay functionality that we want in there is in there now. So, or it will be by the end of this lesson anyway. Let me go ahead and minimize this and bring up Unity. So here in Unity, this is where we left off last time. I hit play, the spawner moves back and forth, it spawns all the different things. Now, if you were just following the code last time and did this video right when it came out, your code might be a little bit off. I had a problem. I was never spawning the turkey with the black hat, and so I'm going to double click on that. If you've downloaded the code recently or watched the video recently, that's been updated, so that shouldn't be an issue anymore. Right here where I say going up to 4, when you're doing floats, you can get up to whatever the number right here is. But we're not, in this case, we're doing integers, and so, as this says, be between 0 and 4 to return a value between 0 and 3, because with integers, it's never going to hit this number. So we want elements 0 to 3, which would be bat, cat, snowman, or hat. So we've got some different debug log statements here about the random numbers, things like that. We don't need all that. I'm going to double click on this to bring up the code. We don't need to know which random number that we're getting because we know that that's working now. Control S to save that, or Command S on the Mac. Click back over here. So now the only thing it should be doing is giving us a score when they fall in the bucket. Now, what you might notice, as someone else helpfully pointed out, is that it's not very random, and it's actually pretty specific about where it drops them, and that's bad for a game. So we're going to make a quick change on that, and what we'll do is we're going to take this random range statement, we're going to scroll down, move it, and add it down here. Now, you see, time left until spawn is the current time minus the start time. So the easiest way to do what we want to do, which is basically change the time a little bit to when things spawn so that they don't spawn in exactly the same spot. Right now they're spawning at exactly the same spot because we've got 1 second between each spawn. So what we want to change is actually start time. So it's going to be time.time minus, and then we're going to paste that in. But this is too much because we've only got 1 second between spawns. So we're going to go and do anything from 0.1f to 0.5f. And that's going to add 1/10 of a second to 1/5 of a second variation to how long it is between spawns, because that is what's calculated up here. Time left until spawn is recalculated each time, so that's not actually where you want to put it. Start time equals time minus this. This is where it needs to be. So we save that out, click back over, and now instead of having one pop up here and there because it's moving back and forth, we'll hit play, and now after the first one it's dropping them. There's a lot more variation in where it puts them. If you watch over here, start time, it's kind of moving it up and pieces and chunks rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is good. This gives a little bit of variation, making our game more like a game so that you're actually trying to catch things and you don't know exactly where they're going to be. So go ahead and save that out, and I'm going to go ahead and save my scene out again and call it, well, it'll be part 4, lesson 2D. So scene, double click there, just make sure that's where we're at. Alright. Now that we've got things moving around a little bit, we need to have our bucket moving around. We need to add some player movement. The best way to do this for what we're doing now is to use the get axis command. So I'm going to go back over here to my browser. Basically what it does, it's going to pull the input from our arrow keys, although you can change that to be something else. And then it's going to move our object in relation to it. See how to use control with arrow keys for left and right input axes. Now, this is Unity3dstudent.com, run by an awesome guy named Will Goldstone. He did a ton of stuff in the Unity community when it was first getting started. He literally wrote the book on Unity, the first one anyway, and he now works for Unity Technologies. But you can see some of his other sites, Learn Unity 2D, different things. Once you get down the road, Unity 3D Work is a great site, but I'm rambling. Anyway, on this particular page, and I will include a link, there's a video here that's about 3 minutes that explains in depth the code used here. You can also go to unity3d.com. If you just Google get access, or you can go to tutorials, module scripting, get access. There's another 3-minute video that has an even more demonstration as to what it does and how it does what it does. It's the same basic stuff. If you want it in JavaScript or Boo instead, you can do that. I'm going to use the example from Will's page. I'm not going to watch the videos right now. I'll leave that as an exercise for you. But basically what we want is this function update, get the input from the horizontal axis and translate our stuff. So I'm going to copy that, minimize this, go back to Unity, and we need to move our bucket. So I don't think we've got a bucket script anywhere. So we make one. Add component. Scripts. Nope. New script. And we're going to call it bucket movement. And create and add. Double click right there to bring up our new script. Alright, now I'm going to paste this code in. Now, it's not going to work right away because this is JavaScript, because that's what he had on his site. It's very easy to convert. So I'm going to cut that float, delete the colon, overwrite the var, paste that. So now we have float horiz equals input get axis horizontal, then transform translate vector3 horiz 0 0. So that is the x, that's the y, and that's the z, which is depth, and I can't really demonstrate that with the cursor. The only other thing we need to do is type the word new. It is a new vector3. That's just one of those little quirks of C# that you get used to. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to go over here. Hopefully it compiles. We get no errors. So just with those 2 lines of code, now I use the arrow keys, and hey, part of our bucket moves, and it looks like we can actually catch things. So a few problems here. One, obvious, is that, well, we're only moving part of the bucket. Also, it might be pretty obvious that this is going way too fast to really be useful. So, it's alright. We can change these things. one at a time. So bucket top, that's going to be the top of our bucket. We're going to drag that into bucket 2D so that now the whole thing is in there. Hit play. Again, use my arrow keys. All right, the whole bucket is moving now. So now we are actually grabbing things as they fall. But again, it's still way too quick, and I'm watching over here as I play. Go ahead and stop that. So the next thing that we need to do is add a speed modifier to make this to be a little bit slower. And Will talks about this in his video, although he doesn't actually do it. So what we're going to do, we're going to add a public float called move speed, and we're going to set it at 0.5, because like so many things, this axis is going from 0 to 1. 1 is full bore, or actually in the other way, it goes from positive 1 to negative 1. And again, if you watch either of those videos, or both of them, even better, you'll understand that more. So we're going to add in a basic move speed of 0.5 to slow it down to about halfway where it's at. So then we want to do the horiz times move speed. Save that. Go back over here. Now we got our move speed variable right there. We hit play. Try moving the bucket. It's a little bit more reasonable. If you want to check it, make sure it's still working. You can drag that down a lot more. And so now, as I use my arrow keys, it moves much, much, much slower. If we move that back to 1, then it moves much faster. And so probably 0.5 is a reasonable, no, that's still kind of fast. Let's do 0.25. That's probably going to be a good option here. You can still kind of grab stuff, not too fast, not too slow. And so again, and this is one of those things that you just have to play around with. Part of game development and game design is you will play your own games until you're sick of them, tweaking little bitty variables like score and movement speed and things like that. Now, before you hit the stop button, remember that since we have changed this inside of Unity while it's running, it's not going to save this when we hit the stop button. So you either need to write it down, remember it, or select it, right click and copy. Now the other thing you'll notice before I hit that is that we've got a lot of stuff over here, and some of these things, if I grab that one and I move here and hit F and then zoom out, you can see all these things are falling, and that is really a problem. So there's a spawner up there. These are all the things that have missed. That's a huge problem, and eventually the game would crash, run out of memory, something like that. So that's the next thing we're going to attack after we do this. So our move speed, I'm going to go back, paste this over here, 0.25, hit enter, just to make sure that it takes. So the next thing that we need is something to catch all those objects that are falling and remove them from the scene, so that people can play our game. It won't crash their computer or their phone or whatever. It'll take a long time to crash on the computer, but you'd be surprised when you've got, a couple hundred physics objects just dropping infinitely into space, how that will strangely affect performance. So what we're going to do is something similar to what we had before. Let's see. I'm going to click on my bucket over here and hit F, which will frame it, give me a good idea where it's at. I'm going to create a empty game object. I'm going to call this, I don't know, object destroyer. Going to move it over here under the bucket. Going to add a component, physics 2D. We want a box collider. It's got to be the physics 2D, remember, because right now we are dealing with 2D. Size, you can tweak it like this. You can use your keyboard shortcuts, or the guys up here. It doesn't matter. Just want to make sure that it's big enough that it's going to catch just about everything that falls onto it. Oh, looks like our bucket movement script is not in the right place. It ought to be in script, so I'm just going to click and drag that in there. And the beauty of Unity is that it remembers. And so it knows if we go over here and we click bucket movement, it's still got a reference to the right one, even though we moved it. So what we need to do with this object destroyer is when things hit it, we want them to be destroyed. Does that sound familiar? It should, because we've got a bucket trigger right here. Well, I think I see a problem. Bucket trigger is outside of our bucket, which might explain why things were hitting it and not destroying like they should have been. So we're going to grab and drag that up into here. Now the trigger will move with the bucket, which apparently it was not doing before. Now you notice the turkey over there and the bat, some of those things, they're hitting the collider below. They're starting to collect up because they're hitting the object destroyer, which is currently just collecting things because it's not destroying anything yet. Now bucket trigger, we have destroy object and add point. We're going to do a very similar script. So I'm going to double click on that. Come over here. It's very simple. Here's the score. You know, the object is a trigger. So we've got on trigger enter, destroy collision object, add score. It's going to be almost identical. Go ahead and copy that. Select it, right click, copy it. Over here. Now object destroyer, make sure that it's set as a trigger, add a component, new script, C# script called destroy all objects that hit this. And you know, you don't have to be that verbose, but it doesn't hurt. So we're going to remove these, paste. The only thing we're going to change is that we don't need to keep a score. Now, if you wanted to, you could keep up with how many objects that they've missed. And you could make it so that when they only, if they miss 3 objects, they lose the game or something like that. The old Kaboom game, I think you started out with 3 buckets of water, and each time you missed something, each time you missed a bomb, you lost a bucket. And once you lost all 3, your game was over. So you could do that, and so you would do that something like private int missed objects, and so every time something enters, we destroy it. Copy that, say missed objects equals missed objects plus 1, and say we have missed so many objects. And you know what? We'll just go ahead and leave that in there. If you want to quit the game as a result, that would be a little bit harder, but not much more. But I'll go ahead and leave that in just as a variation of something you can do. So my score does not exist in the current context. Double click that. Oops. Alright. So missed objects should be there instead of my score. Now we've removed all references to my score. Click back over here. Now let's hit, wait, we can't hit play yet. Yes, we can. Okay. If you create the script over here, then you have to make sure you drag it over there. But because I did the add component and added it right here, it's already attached to this object. So we're good to go. So I'm going to hit play. And now, as things fall and miss, they hit, they destroy, and it destroys them back over here. And it tells us how many objects we've missed. And so now there's only a few of these clone objects on the screen at once, which is really good. That's what you want. So now, okay, we've got points, we've got how many objects are being missed, things like that. So this is a good thing. Now we've got the game moving around. We're destroying the objects that are missed so that we don't, crash the system. We're adding points. Couple more things we need to do. One, we need to pull this camera back some so that we can see a little bit better. That's important because right now you would have to be psychic to tell where they're coming from and catch them in time, I think. The other thing that we're going to do is add a score to the screen. So let's go ahead and hit stop with the main camera. Okay, now we click on camera and it gives us kind of a rough idea of what we've got, how much of it we can see. So I'm clicking on this arrow to move it up, and then I'm clicking on one of the dots to give us a better idea of where things are at. So now this has given us basically a preview of the camera area. So things are going to spawn right up here, and judging from this, they're probably going to spawn on the screen. They're going to fall down. We've got our bucket near the bottom of the screen. So let's try that out. Hit play. Go back and forth, and yeah, so we can see them, we can kind of catch them, and grab them, and it's not too hard, but it's not easy. But hey, it's no Flappy Bird, right? So anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of where we want to go with this. I think the only thing else that we need now is to add the score on the screen. And so that deals with fonts. So let's chat about that for a minute. And then once we get the score on the screen, that's going to be in the end of this lesson. What we're going to do, probably the next video I make will be a video on the 3D series, back in that one, because I've had several people wanting me to revisit that. Then I will come back to this. We're going to give it a new look, make it look nicer, look more like a professional kind of game, because right now it looks like what it is, which is just random stuff thrown together in a scene, basically. And it plays good. It plays basically like what we want, and that's good, but it doesn't really look very cohesive. You've got clip art, you've got part of a picture, it's got Unity's default blue camera background. And these are not bad things, but now that we've developed the game and got it reasonably like where we want it, we want to go in and make it look nicer. But that'll be the next lesson in this 2D series. Anyway, let's go ahead and minimize this, pull this up. So let's talk about fonts. I'm using a font in this game. I'm going to be using it called Gilgongo. I am using it because I can include it, because the license is free. That's not just the price of how much I pay for it, that is the license to be able to use it. And what that means, free, is that basically anybody can do anything with it. That's not the case with most fonts. You need to be careful when you include fonts in your game to make sure that you're meeting the license requirements. I have to be even more careful when I'm including them with tutorials, which is why I picked one with the free license. Now, if you're not a fan of this, or you want to find something different, there are different places like openfontlibrary.org, and you click over here on the OFL SIL Open Font License, which is what I've got the current search, and you've got a bunch of different things. So you might say, well, hey, what is the Open Font License? Well, I'm glad you asked. Here is the key point, and this is a site called Font Squirrel, 100% free for commercial use. You can use these things in your game. The key, and over here, how you search is look for OFL Apache. The key to the SIL Open Font License, and why I'm using this and why it's good for you to use them, is that it allows the licensed fonts to be used, modified, redistributed freely as long as they're not sold by themselves. The fonts, including any derivative works, can be bundled, embedded, redistributed, or sold with any software. It cannot be released. So you can do what you want with the fonts, including bundle and embedding them, as long as you don't sell the font itself. And so there's tons of good open font license fonts. It's good to be on the right side of the law. That's important. And you want to pay people for their work if you ever want to have any hope of people paying you for your work, I think. So that key section, and again, Font Squirrel, OFL Apache, there's other sites as well. Now to get the fonts into Unity, Sometimes you have to use a program like BM Font, so you can find it at angelcode.com, that gives you an image like this and a text file of data that tells Unity where each of those letters are. That's what I usually end up doing with EasyGUI. I think you have to do it that way with NGUI and a lot of the other ones. Thankfully, there's a relatively easy way that we don't have to use that. What I'm going to do is go over here, my assets, right click, create a new folder called fonts. I'm going to show that in Explorer. Double click on fonts. I'm going to paste in the Gilgon. Now that's the TTF. If I double click on that, it brings up that is a true type font. Install if you don't have it installed, although I don't think that matters. So we're going to go ahead and close that. Now that the font is in here, I'm going to click back over here in Unity. There's our font. So we're going to create a 3D text. By creating this 3D text object, we're going to call it game score. Doesn't matter. And there's the text, there's the font to use, blah blah blah. So don't want to use Arial, we want to use Gilgon. So there we go. And hey, look, hello world. So move that over here and there. We hit play, it stays there. It's a start. I'm going to go ahead and hit F to move up to it. So you might notice that it looks awful. We're going to fix that. So click on game score. Now this is where it gets kind of silly. We don't want to use the default font size. We want to crank it up, and then we're going to reduce the character size. So by doing that, now you see we get a nice sharp looking font. And so again, that's boosting the font size, reducing the character size. You want to leave the scale at all 1 if you can. You can have some weirdness happen with these. If you start messing with those, it's better to deal with this stuff over here. So let's go ahead and just put score 0, because that's where we start. Now what we need to do is tie the text mesh of the game score object to our bucket trigger, because that is the object that has the script that destroys the object and adds a point. Let's go ahead, double click in here. What we're going to do is we're going to add a public reference to something called a text mesh, which is, well, what we've got. We're going to call it score text. I'm going to hit save. Now, instead of this debug log statement, I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to comment that out. Score text.text in lowercase equals, paste that back in, delete these things because we don't need parentheses. And well, let's not get all fancy with all that. We just want it to say what it did before, score, and then put in the score. This part's important. If you want it to say score colon whatever, if you don't have that in there and just have the number, then that's going to wipe out what we've got and just put the number in there. So I'm going to hit save. We're going to assign a reference to the score text and run it, and it should just work. So we go back to bucket trigger. It's looking for a score text. We'll drag this over there. It lights up, which means it's going to let me do it. So now when I hit run, it should keep up with the score and update this. So let's go ahead and try that. Hit play. Alright, we want to start grabbing our objects. Look at that. And as I grab them, it is updating the score. So that is going to end this lesson. That is all you need, I think, for a simple beginning little game. You know, you've got some player interaction, you've got something they're trying to do, you're keeping up with the score. We don't have an end game and things like that, but this is a good place to start. As I said, in the next lesson, we're going to take this and make it look a little bit nicer. Beyond that, we might take this and turn it into a couple other games. I'm not sure. I need to focus back on the 3D series, but these are the core concepts that you need. Player movement, destroying objects that hit something so that they're not falling forever, removing an object and adding a point, spawning the objects. You can take those simple scripts, change up the graphics, and you could make it so that it was shooting something up. Make a game like Space Invaders or Galaga or Galaxian. There's a lot of different things you could do with this basic framework. So, I am Greg with howtobuildgames.com. You are learning how to build a game. And hey, you've got your first game if you've been following along. Make sure that you go back to the website, sign up for the email list. That'll tell you. I send out emails about twice a month because I'm putting videos out about twice a month, roughly every 2 weeks. And that is how you get access to the source code, the art assets, all that stuff. When you first sign up, you get an email that has the link for everything previous. And from that point on, you get an email each time a new lesson comes out with the data there. As far as the website, there's not a whole lot to look at or see. But I am working on a new website that's coming soon, and we'll have a lot of other features, some interviews with people that I've gotten to know over the years and things like that. I think you'll really be excited about some of the plans I've got for it. So go to the website, sign up, make sure to like the video over here, and subscribe if you want to get more videos like this one, and let me know. Thanks so much for your time, and have a good one.